So this is a sikha from Shabbos Parshas Vaera, Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and the Rebbe is going to speak about part of it, the connection of Rosh Chodesh Shvat with Parshas Vaera, but especially what's miyuchad about Rosh Chodesh Shvat. In Yonah miyuchad shel Rosh Chodesh Shvat, mefurish b'Torah shebeksav, b'ashri asar chodesh, b'echol lachodesh, which is Rosh Chodesh Shvat, the 12th month, the first day. The 11th month, the first day. Hoyel Moshe be'eres ha-Torah. Kloimar hascholas limud ubir Mishnah Torah. Kol prote and yonim shenemar dal tzvam shalifnezeh. That's what Mishnah Torah is. First of all, it deals with all the details of what went on in the first four Chumashim. By Safis in Yonim Chadashim, for example, he brings in there's the different halachas that are brought down only in Mishnah Torah that we don't have, only in Chumash Dvarim that we don't have in the first four Chumash. U'ba'ofen the Ba'eres HaTorah. B'shivim Lashon Pirsha Lahem, that's the taich, that's the meaning of the word Ba'er. Ba'er means that was B'shivim Lashon. Al-pi ma shenamar v'yom meil niskarim v'naisim, muvan she'inyan ze choyzer v'nishna medei shana b'shana, u'ba'gedama. Afal pisha mihu zeh zehu asher orav liber lageshes lahaska filochelik echad mini elef midargosi shel Moshe Rabbeinu. Who are we b'chlal to even think about comparing ourselves even to the level of Moshe Rabbeinu? Mikol makmare efetz katseu v'shem etzmenu meir chulu. In every single generation, like he's going to explain, and in every single yid, we have the inyan of Moshe, and therefore the Be'er Moshe's HaTorah Azois, that concept is shaykh by everyone, by the whole Klal Yisrael, every generation, and by every Yid. Hein b'negel Klal Yisrael, we know Spashtus of the Moshe b'chol dor v'dor. So therefore, since we have a Spashtus of Moshe in every generation, so we can have the Be'er Moshe in every generation. Hein b'negel chol echad v'echad Yisrael, kol nefesh v'beis Yisrael, Yeshma b'chinas Moshe Rabbeinu olav hashalom. Like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Va'ad she'inyan zeh mizgalu v'poil, k'moshe kosav va'at Yisrael ma Hashem elokecha shoyel mi'imach, ki'im liyira. So the Gemara says, Atu yira milsa zutra sihi. That's all Hashem asks of you, only to have yira. So what's the answer to the Gemara? In. Legabe Moshe milsa zutra sihi. So the Alter Rebbe asks, so what does that help us? If it's Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to tell us how to act, so what does it help that the Gemara answers and says, Legabe Moshe milsa zutrasihi, ma Hashem shoyel mi machim liyira. It's helped mirnish. Me, it doesn't help. And Moshe Rabbeinu says milsa zutrasihi. So the Alter Rebbe explains in Perek Mem Beis that every Yid has a part of Moshe in him, and because of that, umitzad b'chinas Moshe shebekirbai, Nasis hayira milsa zutrasa gam etzel kol echad v'echad misrael. Da shoyel mi'imach ksiv. The Alter Rebbe is madgish that he says that Hashem is asking from you. In other words, when in Chumash Dvarim, in Parshas Ekev, Moshe Rabbeinu is addressing every Yid and saying, what does Hashem want from you? He doesn't want from you anything big. He wants liyira. Now, if you're going to take the words of the Gemara just kipshuti, that it's talking about from Moshe Rabbeinu, it's a small thing. So, what's he knows who he's dealing with. He knows he's dealing with us, and still in all he tells us, Ma vayel kecha shoyel mi'imach kim liyira, is the charaya that the very fact that he asks it from us, it's shaykh to us. The reason why it's shaykh to us is because the Moshe Rabbeinu should be kirbay. So that's what he's saying. Therefore, that it becomes Hainu shebechinas Moshe shebekirbai hu inyan habol de gilui ba'avoida b'poil liyiras Hashem alakecha lolechas v'chol drachav goymer lishmer es mitzvahs Hashem v'eschol kaisav goymer. That this becomes something that's ma'aser b'poil. It affects every yid. It affects us b'poil to have this type of kesher with Hashem in our day-to-day life, all because of the Moshe that's within us. Move on. Shevavoy Rosh Chodesh Shvat B'chol Shana V'Shana Maschel Moshe Rabbeinu is Pashtus the Moshe Sheb'chol Dor V'Dor Ad L'Bchinas Moshe Sheb'chol Echad V'Echad B'Yisrael Levayer Es Inyoni HaTorah. So this is the amazing approach of the Rebbe. It's not just that because there's a Moshe Rabbeinu within each and every one of us, therefore we could have a year of the Eibishter, but because of the Moshe Rabbeinu that's within us, what Moshe Rabbeinu did on Rosh Chodesh Shvat resonates by us also. We can do the same thing. Levayer Zinyoni HaTorah Koloimar Nesinas Koyach Miuchedes LaFotzes HaTorah L'Chol Echad V'Echad Miyisrael. And not just that we have the Koyach to be Meifitz the Torah, but U'Ba'oifen the Bayer B'Shivim Loshen Gam LeYehudi Shenimtzu B'Maim the Matzav Shein Shayach Leisata Lilmei the L'Hovnes HaTorah B'Loshen HaKodesh Shalachein B'Hechrech L'Targum Leis HaTorah B'Sfas HaMedina B'Loshen Am V'Am B'Shivim Loshen. So therefore, every Yid, so it's interesting, the Rebbe says, every Yid has the Moshe Rabbeinu Shebekir by. So every Yid is responsible to deliver and explain and be Meifetz Torah to every single Yid, even if it means bring it down to that Yid's language because he doesn't know any other language. He can't learn Torah in Lashon Kodesh. Yesh lahoisif sha'inyan the bayers ha'Torah hu gam ubemiyuchad b'negel lepnimis ha'Torah. Gam ha'inyanim the pnimis ha'Torah nimshachim mizgalim ba'oifen the bayer ba'avona v'asaga. Yisparnasun, the lashon of the Tikkun Zohar is that it has to be the pnimis ha'Torah before Mashiach's times. There has to be Yisparnasun menei. It has to be in a way of parnasa, just like parnasa means that you get food, and food comes inside of the person and it's digested. The same thing, parnasa, beruchnius of Torah means that the pnimis HaTorah is not just something that's like, very spiritual things, but I don't understand what's going on, but it's in a way of parnasa, it's in a way that's internalized. Aidei Torah's Chassidus Chabad, it becomes yisparnasun, it becomes ba'er heitev, or ba'er, shnizyas ta'idei ad morazokin, asher yom ha'ilulu shaloi chav da'al tevis, Shaboy Misalim calling Yon Evdasa Sharavat calling Mechayev, like we know always on the yard site, all the whole avoid of the tzaddik are oila. So in that year, since Rosh Chodesh Shvat was on Shabbos, so if Rosh Chodesh Shvat's on Shabbos, if you calculate backwards, so in that year in Tov Shemem Zayin, when was Chavdal Tevis, Hoya B'Yom Rishon the Shavuazah, and Sheshlem Musoi Vaychulu B'Yom Shabbos that the Rebbe always speaks about how Shabbos brings shleimus to everything that occurs during the days of the week beforehand. So the Shabbos that year was the shleimus for Chavdal Tevis that took place on the Sunday of that week. The Indian Zeh Kosher Gam Hasir B'Shvat. Why does it have to do with Hasir B'Shvat? It's only Rosh Chodesh. How do you get from Rosh Chodesh to Yud Shvat, which is Bechlal? In the Sichos you could see that, and again I don't know how much this is to be found by the other Rebbeim when they spoke about, let's say, if the Frierdikeh Rebbe spoke in the Sichos when he spoke about the yard site of the Rebbe Rashab, or even if they spoke about the yard site of the Alter Rebbe, I'm not sure. But the Rebbe's Koch in Yud Shvat began at least from Shabbos Mevarchim Shvat, but very often beforehand. It's Tevis. You got to already start thinking about Yud Shvat is going to be in 30 days, and what are you going to do, and how are you going to prepare, and how is it going to be a Yud Shvat the way it's supposed to be? It was like an amazing type of approach that already you don't wait for Yud Shvat to the morning before Yud Shvat, tonight's Yud Shvat, I have to do this and this, one of the 10 minhagim or whatever, that's the list of minhagim for Yud Shvat. It's already weeks beforehand the Rebbe was winding us up. Yud Shvat is coming, Yud Shvat is coming, you got to prepare. It's versteht sich, Rosh Chodesh Shvat. It's already very, very close to it. So he says, but why Rosh Chodesh Shvat? What's special about Rosh Chodesh Shvat with the connection with Yud Shvat? Shenichol b'Rosh Chodesh, because the 10th of Shvat is already included in Rosh Chodesh. HaKolos Kol Yemei HaChodesh. We know that Rosh Chodesh is called the head of the month, the Rosh, just like Rosh Hashanah includes all the days of the year. The same thing, Rosh Chodesh includes all the days of the month. The Rosh Chodesh has in it, especially and even more so, the special days of it. Ubehem Yom Asiri Kodesh. The Rebbe always brings down Bekeshet Yud Shvat, the expression that the pasuk says that the 10th will be holy. Yom Hilula, the Kodesh Meirach HaMe'admur Nesidareinu. So the Rebbe is, this is another Geshmaka point. The Rebbe is going to connect it specifically with what the Frierdikeh Rebbe was about. Who was about the topic of Bayres HaTorah? Who brought the Torah out? Who explained the Torah? Who brought it out into Shivim Loshen? The Rebbe talks about the Frierdikeh Rebbe. Avidos Asher Avad Balei Lulihi Hayil Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu Shebedereinu, which he's talking about the Frierdikeh Rebbe. Bayres HaTorah. Shekein al Yodo Netvasif Oid Yoser. Ba'oidach, ba'roichev, ba'oimek, b'shleimas, ha'avona, v'asaga, the Torah Chassidus Chabad. So if already with the Alter Rebbe, you already had the buyer of Pnimis HaTorah, or you already had the beer of Yisparnus Menei of Pnimis HaTorah, how much more so with the Frierdikeh Rebbe that was 6 generations later, that was further explanation, more ba'oimek and more ba'roichev and so on. Koil, Memiuchad, B'shivim, Loshen Pirshalem, Targum in Yonei HaTorah, Adlin Yonam Achia Mukim Torah Chassidus Bolshain Am V'Am. Hainu. Shegam Yehudi Shenimtza Leisata B'Maimed Matzev Da'acher. Now the Rebbe is going to play off of the name of the Frierdikeh Rebbe, Yosef and Yitzchak. Yosef Havayli Bein Acher. So even someone that's in a state of Acher Shalachein Ein Shayach Adayin L'Loshon HaKodesh. That's why he's in the state of Acher, or he's not Shayach L'Loshon Kodesh because he's somewhere out there. Like the name of the Frierdikeh Rebbe is Yosef, which is Havayli Bein Acher. Las is Ma'acher Ben, like the Rebbe always explains. Was the job of the Frierdikeh Rebbe. That's our job as well. Yes, Lamed Ulahazbir Gam in Yoni Torah Chassidus. That's the mission that the Frierdikeh Rebbe was about. And he connects Chassidus has to do with the second name of the Frierdikeh Rebbe, Yitzchak. Tzchoik. We know that Yechida is the highest darge in the nefesh. In the koiches ha-nefesh, there is seichel, there is midas, there is machshava dibra maisa. But higher than seichel, there is rotzen, that's connected chaya. Tainug, oinig, that's connected Yechida. So when we talk about Yechida Shabbat Chassidus is called the Yechida Shabbat. So therefore, that's the level of Tainug. And Pashat Kipshutei also, the whole idea of Chassidus is by learning Chassidus Chabad and by implementing the teachings of Chassidus Chabad, it's to bring us to have a Tainug in Torah mitzvahs. So first of all, Chassidus being Yechidah Shabbat Torah is the Tainug part of Torah, and it also, he doesn't say this over here, but it also brings a Tainug in our Avodas Hashem. That when we do it, we don't do it in the way of Mitzvah Noshim L'Mada, we do it with a Geshmak, with a Chayis, with a Hiddur, and so on. So that's the second name of the Frierdikeh Rebbe, Yitzchak. Yitzchak is in the word Tainug. So he is Yosef Havayli Bein Acher. He teaches to the Bein Acher, someone that doesn't understand yet in Loshen HaKodesh, and therefore needs to have the Bayer Heitiv B'Shivim Loshen. What does he teach him? The Darg of Torah that's associated with Yitzchak, with Tainug. Ba'oifen shal havana v'asag ad l'shleimus havana v'asag l'fi erke shemei v'lodei Tainug Yitzchak. Here he actually talks about that when you have the ultimate level of understanding in Torah, so that brings the Tainug. That's Yitzchak. Kimeduver barucha b'svadiyas shalifnei that in that year the Rebbe spoke about this in Parshas Vayechi and Shabbos Parshas Shmois. He spoke about the idea of the Tainug in learning and in that comes from shleimus havana v'asag. So now the Rebbe is going to connect us all with the Parsha of the week. By the way, this is not what we usually learn on Thursday nights. We usually learn from the Sichos. Sometimes we'll learn from different Fabrengens or Moged Sichos. This is very much Fabrengen style. The Rebbe's Fabrengens, usually the first 2 Sichos spoke about different topics, the Shabbos Fabrengens Befrat, spoke about different topics of the particular day or date. It's this day in the month, it's this day of the week, it's this parsha of the week, and the Rebbe would not just explain the mile of each one, but connect them all together. So this is what Shabbos HaBerengen, it keeps along that style. It's not like the Likutei Sichos that we usually learn, that usually takes one Likudah, one topic, and explains that Rashi, or explains that Pasuk, or explains that Inyan. Yes, Lakash is in Parsha Shavua, but Chilas Parsha Shavua Namar, Ve'era Lavram Gomer Shmi Avaya Loinoi Daiti Lahem, to the Avis. L'chein Emer L'bnei Yisrael Ani Havaya V'yadaitem Ki Ani Havaya L'kechem. So just the opposite than what happened by the Avis. By the Yidden, I will have by them the idea of Havaya. The Isa B'Rayim Mehem, the Rayim Mehem is a part of the Zohar, like you have right away in Perek Aleph and Tanya. V'yidaitem ki ani Havaya L'kechem. So the Rayim Mehem says as follows: Pekuda da, this mitzvah, kadma l'chol pekudim. It is the first of all mitzvahs. Reishisa, it's again from the word reishis. Kadma l'chol pekudim leminda leila kutshe berichu. Now the Rebbe is being medayik. You see, it's emphasized the word leminda, to know. Ubelshayna Rambam bas chol sifrei. Yisoidis v'amud hachachmas leida sheyesham matzir rishon chulu. The Rebbe brings out the word, the diuk on the word leida. Leminda, the Zohar says, and leida daike. By the way, the Rebbe also says in the Ha'ara, even though a lot of Alpi Nigla, the Rambam and the Zohar don't have a shaykhs with each other, but the Rebbe is saying in the footnote that it's very shaykh that the makir, the Rambam, to say, Yisoidis, Ramud HaChochmas, Leida, not Lahamin, but Leida Sheyesham Matzir Rishon is taka from the Zohar. Because the Zohar says that's the first mitzvah, so that's why the Rambam taka says it. So he says, Hainu ba'ofen shel avona v'asagi. That's what leminda and leida means. Ad lebchinas hadas. In avona v'asagi itself, as we know in Chassidus, you can understand things in Chochmah Bina, but then there's a way of das that you become completely connected with it. Lashon iskashrus v'ischabrus shemekasher daite bekesher amitz v'chazak moed v'yiska machshavte b'chayzik b'gdul saying self baruch like the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Gimel and Tanya, the mile of das over Chochmah Bina. Va'ad kedei kach, to such a degree, why do you need a das? And why is it not enough just to have Chochmah Bina? Because through das is Shaideis and Nasa, Leidas Amidas, which is Ava Vanfel, V'yira Vanfel. And so again, this is our Parsha, V'yadaitem, that you should know. And what does it have to do with? How do you know? Believe, yeah, every child believes. How do you know? You gotta have Bayer Hetiv. You gotta have what we're talking about by the Rosh Chodesh Shvat. But it calls a Nasai the limud Pnimis HaTorah, Yedias Alakus, Ba'ofen the Bayer, Havana v'Asaga b'Chochmah Bina v'Das, u'b'miyuchad Aydei Torah Chassidus Chabad. That's when you could have this level of Bayer Hetiv, Bayer in the Pnimis HaTorah. V'oidinin b'ketcher v'shaychs l'Parsha Shavua of this inyan of Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Emer b'nei Yisrael ani Havaya v'yidaitem ki ani Havaya. Nemar b'kesher u'b'shaychos li'yitzias Mitzrayim. V'yitzeis yescha metach tzivus Mitzrayim v'yitzalti goymer v'ga'alti goymer v'lakachti goymer. Until finally vad ve'veis yescham al ha'aretz hachel ma'knisa la'eretz Yisrael adei Yeshua v'ad l'knisa la'eretz b'ge'ula ha'asida. The ve'veisi is not just about going into Eretz Yisrael, but it's koilul also Mashiach's times. Ki yadua shal lashon v'aveisi lashon chamishi shal geula b'yisafel adal shoyin shal geula shalifneza koyal agula asida, and because of that, there's 4 cases that's connected the dal shoyin shal geula, what took place in the past. And then the Rebbe speaks about a whole discussion about Kosh Chamishi, if that has to do with Kosh Ol Yo. It doesn't have to do with Kosh Ol Yo. There's a day that there was a Kosh Chamishi that you poured and you didn't drink. And that was connected the Geula, which we don't have yet. Not like the 4 cups that we drink, that's connected the four Geulas or the 4 Lashonos of Geula of the past. The Inyan Zeh, Ve'veisi Eschem El Sa'aretz, Kosher Gavim Rosh Chodesh Shvat. What's the connection? Vayhi bar boim shana, va'ashti asur chodesh, be'echal ha-chodesh, in the first day of the 11th month, hoyel Moshe beiris ha-Torah goyim. Ha'inyan the beiris ha-Torah, loy hoya rak berish chodesh shvat. It was only hoyel, like the Rebbe says, ela kemudish b'kosav sheberish chodesh shvat, Hoyil, which Hoyil means Hischil, Rashi explains, Moshe Bayers HaTorah. Haschola Bilvad, Shekein Inyan Zan Nimshach B'meshach Kol Yemei Chodesh Shvat, Ad L'Shiva Ba'adu Shabbai Nistalak Moshe. It wasn't just Rosh Chodesh Shvat. It began a process. Koilol Kama Parshish Shenamar by Bayayim Kepash Saksuvim. The Moshe Rabbeinu said certain parts in the Torah on the day of Rosh Chodesh Shvat, but he kept on going, he kept on explaining. And the Rebbe says a very practical thing, that Moshe Rabbeinu calculated how long he would need to be able to do this. Shekein biyadish miskarav hayom sheboy malu yamav v'shnoisav. By knowing this, he knew that was going to happen. Hischil lalamid ulavayir mishnah Torah ba'oifen sheyaspik l'sayim lifnei histalkusei, the Rebbe says. So, and he brings from Rashi. Rashi says over there in that pasuk that he did it samuch l'misa. So the Rebbe's medayik from that in the footnote in 34 that the mashmois is that Pashat Moshe Rabbeinu made a cheshbon. Okay, soon I'm going to have to pass away, so I need to really figure out how to fit in all this bayers HaTorah that I want to do before I pass away. V'nimtza she'in in the bayers HaTorah. Mirish Chodesh Shvat at Shiva Ba'adar hu achana hachi achroino l'knisa ba'aretz behevd emafchi avshari. What's the soonest that they would be able to go into Eretz Yisrael? So we know there was a whole calculation. After Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, so they were already supposed to go into Eretz Yisrael. But there was a delay. What was the delay? There was La'achrei Shloshim Yoim the Evlei Shel Moshe, which is Shiva B'Nissen. So from the 7th of Adar till the 7th of Nissen, there was 30 Yemei Eivel, so they didn't go into Eretz Yisrael yet. Then there was another 3 days of preparing to go in. But also they went in on Yud Nissen, they went into Eretz Yisrael. Asher kol meshchat kufa ad asira b'nissen mahave hemshech simat kufa dan hogus Moshe. This is all, even though Moshe Rabbeinu was nostalgic on Zayin Adar, until they actually went into Eretz Yisrael on Yud Nissen, the Rebbe is saying this is all still a continuation of Moshe Rabbeinu, because they were delayed because of Moshe. And only La'achra came B'Yud Aleph Nissen, his Chila Iked Kufas Hanagosa Shel Yeshua, Kibush Yeshua, that's what began from Yud Aleph Nissen. If anybody's always looking for special things of Yud Aleph Nissen is the Aschala of Yeshua. So the Rebbe says, in a similar vein, you have also this inyan of the Frierdikeh Rebbe, concluding and making the last final steps, just like Moshe Rabbeinu, before going to Eretz Yisrael, was doing the last steps of Bayers HaTorah. The same thing, Chassidus Chabad, and especially the Frierdikeh Rebbe, was also doing the last steps necessary for the Achana, for the Gula Hasidim. The Gilui Torah Chassidus Chabad, Hachel Madmur Azokim Balai Lu the Chavdal Tevis. Shezoy Hachana Leveisi Eschem Ala Aretz Begula Hasid Alavay De Mashiach Tzidkeinu. Because we know that they're connected. Sharei Bias Mashiach Tzidkeinu Hi'aydei Zeh Sheyafutzu Ma'asecha Chutza. And what is the idea of Yafutzu Ma'asecha Chutza, through whom? Hachel Megulas Ad Murazakim Yotas Kislev Shaz Hiskel Ikara in Yafutzu Ma'asecha Chutza. Though already with the Alter Rebbe, and even we could say in the times of the Baal Shem Tov, there was to a certain degree the idea of Hafatzas HaMayonos and the Mezritch Magid and the Talmidei Magid. But the truth kufa of Hafatzas HaMayonos Chutza, he says, he brings down from Torah Shalom, began once the Alter Rebbe came out of prison. So the whole oifen of his talking and saying Chassidus was in a totally different way, in a totally different style than he did up till then. So therefore, the true Hafatzas HaMayonos began in Yutas Kislev. In the Alter Rebbe's times, Chassidus did not reach in a way of chutzah. It was in Russia, it was in Poland maybe, and so on. After the days of the Frierdikeh Rebbe, V'loy noisar elo l'tzachtzech to polish the buttons. But take it from Yad imdu hochin kulcham, like the Frierdikeh Rebbe says and writes, l'kabos me'Mashiach tzidkenu. So we see that just like Moshe Rabbeinu did the Bayras HaTorah to prepare to go into Eretz Yisrael, the same thing, there's the Bayras HaTorah, the Pnimius HaTorah to prepare for going into Eretz Yisrael with Mashiach. V'yesh lahoyse v'lakasher kol anal im shir tilam hayoyim kvish v'nechlok im mea chodesh. Hashir the Rosh Chodesh Yom Aleph b'Chodesh was Chola Sefer HaTehillim Ashrei Ha'ish. Now, I mentioned before about the Rebbe explaining different things having to do with days of the week and days of the month and so on. Still in all, it's not as common. Yes, the Rebbe does it a lot of times, but not by every time when he talks about the day of the month is he going to bring in the Tillim of the day. Here, when he talks about Rosh Chodesh Shvat, he does explain the Tillim of the day, the Shir Tillim. So he says, Das Chol Sefer HaTillim is the words Ashrei Ha'ish. V'inyan zeh shayich v'myuchad l'Rosh Chodesh Shvat. The Medrash says like this: Moshe in Parshas V'zois HaBracha, in the end of Perek Lamed Gimel, the end of all the brachas that Moshe Rabbeinu gave. Perek Lamed Al is the last Perek in Chumash Dvarim, but at the end of Perek Lamed Gimel, concluding all the brachas, it says over there the last pasuk begins with the words Ashrecha Yisrael. So since Moshe Rabbeinu concluded his words like to the Yidden with the Ashrecha Yisrael. Vav David kishabaloimer tehillah. In other words, Sefer Tehillim mimakim shepasak Moshe misham hischil. Moshe Rabbeinu stopped with Ashrecha, so he started with Ashrei Ha'ish. Hainu she'ashrei ish shebaschol Sefer Tehillim kosher mashrecha Yisrael sheboi siyam Moshe Rabbeinu limud Mishnah Torah shehischil b'Rosh Chodesh Shvat. So today's Tehillim, which is Ashrei Ish, is connected with what Moshe Rabbeinu concluded in his whole process that he started on Rosh Chodesh Shvat. V'hinei Asher, the word Asher, Ashrei v'Ashrecha, hu inyan ha'tainug. It's the idea of Osher, good fortune.
Do you ever explain why he likes connecting dates with, connecting stuff? I know Rebbe was into that.
Exactly. So that's the first thing. There's a lot of Reb Leivik's style that's reflected in this. Did the Rebbe actually say why?
Like, what's the purpose? Like
the Rebbe didn't, I don't think, addressed it in that type of way, but I'm not a baki in every sikha, far from it. But it seems to be the Rebbe's approach always was that everything in Torah, in mitzvahs, is part of a full picture. It's not that there is a fragmented Torah. The Rebbe did not tolerate fragmenting Torah. It's not fragmented. There's Nigla, there's Pshat, and there's Remez, and there's Rush, and it's like, he didn't tolerate that at all. Everything must contribute to be part of a full picture. So if multiple things come in one day, and there's a pasuk in Tillim, and the Shir Chumash, and the Rambam, and the Maimer of the day, and the time of the year, and everything needs to contribute to be part of a full picture. And this is what the Rebbe said, it's part of Achdus HaBoirei, that the Torah is a Torah Achas, and therefore, the way it reflects in our Avodah, it's also part of Achdus. But I never remember the Rebbe like saying, like, why do I do this? There are sometimes that the Rebbe will say, people, Tayena him of action, sometimes the Rebbe will say, or somewhere, why do you make this? Why do you do this? Why do you say this? Whatever. I don't remember hearing the Rebbe addressing this particular thing and saying, why does I do this? So the reason is because such and such. But this seems to be the approach that the Rebbe said about many things, that Torah is a Torah Achas, because the Eibishter is Achdus Havayin Einod Milvadi, so everything needs to be in a complete way. Not everything is separate, but just the opposite. Everything complements each other. That's the only thing I could think of.
I think also it makes the point more strong. When it's connected to more things, it's not coming from one point, it's coming from another. Every point you go.
That's like the mile of the Shitase. Yeah.
That's what makes the...
But when you have l'shetase, and you see that Abaye and Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshe or Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai are going with the same nekuda in every single thing, so then it gives a strength to understanding. Even it's so much more true if you see that they're saying the same gang all over, to say it's over here this way also. Yeah, that's a good point. So he says, what's the idea of Oisher who inyanat Tainug? It's also Tainug, like we started speaking about before, the two names of the Frierdikeh Rebbe. The second name is Yitzchak. Yitzchak is in the word Tainug. Tainug is the part of Torah, which is Pnimius HaTorah and Chabad, and Tainug is also the idea of that he does it in a way of a Tainug. All it is, the level of oil which floats to the top, and that oil also has to do, fats, juiciness has to do with tainug. The koyal b'chinas kes ad keser ad leb'chinas pnimius hakeser. That's the level of oil that floats on top of water. It's higher than seder ishtalshalos, and that's the pnimius haTorah. But pratis yoyser, the Rebbe goes in even deeper over here. The keser gufa yesh beis madreges, beis pamim ashrei. If you're talking about that Osher, Shemen is the level of Keser. Since Keser we know has two levels in it, so that's the two Ashreis. The Ashrei of Moshe Rabbeinu saying Ashrecha, and the Ashrei Ish of David HaMelech. K'maymer Azal kol parsha shoytz chaviva al David, Pasach ba ba'ashrei v'siyim ba ba'ashrei. Very interesting thing the Chazal says. Pasach ba'ashrei d'chsiv ashrei ish, v'siyim ba'ashrei d'chsiv ashrei kol choyse boy, u'merumas ba'gam ba'ashrecha loshen kefil, beis pamim ashrei. Ashrecha is plural, it's loshen rabim. So that means that it's twice ashrei. So again, it's going on keser. Chitzonius ha-keser, pnimius ha-keser, v'inyonim b'toira, chitzonius ha-toira, pnimius ha-toira, galya v'sosim, both the revealed part of Torah and the concealed part of Torah. So all of this has to do with Asher, Ashrecha Yisrael, Ashrei Ish. This goes on the highest levels of Seder Ishtalshlos, highest levels of Torah, Chitzonius and Pnimius and so on. V'nimtza, sheba Ashrei Ish, mudgesha inyan, the Pnimius ha-Torah. Kvichnes Bayra, b'Torah's Chassidus Chabad. Sheba mizgala b'chinas ha-Yechida, Tainug sheba Torah, Pnimius HaKesed, like we said before, that Dafke Chassidus Chabad, the Yechida of Torah, that's where you have the Tainug, and that's where you have to do with the Pnimius HaKesed, the level of Atik, like the Rebbe talks about it by Riches in Kunst Inyan Shel Torah's Chassidus. And then the Rebbe brings this also back to the Geula, that this idea of Ashrei has to do also with the Geula Asidah, not just the things we spoke about before, that Bayer has to do with the Geula Asidah, but Ashrei also. K'moikim b'negelin and ha'geulam, ve'veisi eschem ala aretz, loshen chamisha shel Geula, keneged ha'geulah d'yotz Mitzrayim, eschem v'gam ha'geulah Asidah, shegam zeh mudgish ba'ashrei ha'ish. Mimokim shechosa Moshe, misham hischol David. HaKesher. The Rebbe also says in the footnote, of course, Rosh Chodesh has to do with the idea of Geula, because Chiddush Levana is the idea of Shem Hasidim L'Schadush Kemoisa, and so on. HaKesher, the Ashrei Ish La'ashrecha Yisrael, Afal Pi She'ein Ze Masim L'Chura L'Seder Torah V'im L'Ksuvim. It's like skipping. You're going from the end of Chumash Dvarim, which is in Chamish Chumshei Torah, and you're jumping past all the Nevi'im, and you're going to Tehillim, the beginning of Ksuvim. Shari Bein Sefer Dvarim Chamisha Chumshei Torah Sefer Til Mashach L'Ksuvim Boy Kol Sefer HaNevi'im. So why Take did a Chazal like put it together, two things that are like completely separate? The end of the Torah and the beginning of Ksuvim. What are you doing with the Nevi'im in between? Hu beglal HaKesher v'Hashayches de Moshe v'David ki yadua sheMoshe hu Goel Rishon. David, Sharoim is Mashiach, David Malch Mashiach, who Goyal Achron, Vadre Goyal Rishon, who Goyal Achron. So therefore, you have this connection Why are you connecting the Ashrecha of Moshe with the Ashrei Ish of David? Because they have this thing in common, that Moshe and David are both about the Geula, and Moshe is considered the beginning of the Geula, which was completed with David HaMelech. And then the Rebbe goes on and says that Be'etzem, Moshe could have practically been Goyal Achron, if not for the Chet Hegel. They would have gone straight into Eretz Yisrael. He would have been the Goyal Achron also. Yesh l'hoitze b'zem, al piyam evur b'medrash, ilu zachu Yisrael, hoyin nichnasim, Lord, so they Moshe Rabbeinu, b'ofen the Geula shleim, mashein achara golas, k'moshe namar b'kchiras hayom, tivei eimoy, sita eimoy, bahar nach lascha. They will be planted in Yerushalayim. Machen l'shivcha pa'alta Hashem, migdash Hashem, kainu yadecha. Kainu yadecha, migdash Hashem, the Beis HaMikdash that Hashem makes, that's the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi. The Koyal Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, kainu yadecha b'shtei yadayim. Ve'emes ha'ibonu b'shtei yadayim, the Chazal say, b'zman Hashem yimlech lo'elam void, la'asad la'voy, shekalam lucha shaloi. That's what it says later on, at the end of Oz Yashar, Hashem yimlech lo'elam void. So, really in Oz Yashar, Shiras Hayam, the Yidden weren't even in Eretz Yisrael. They were just leaving Mitzrayim. It's already talking about the Gula Asidah because that's what was supposed to take place. They were supposed to right away go into the Gula Asidah. Hayne shebezman amiris Shiras Hayam hoye b'mayim de matzav she'amdu lekanis la'aretz hayde Moshe Rabbeinu ba'ofen the Gula Shleima. Al shachar kach gorem achet. So, in truth, Moshe Rabbeinu is about Mashiach. So it makes sense to go from the Ashrecha of Moshe to the Ashrei of David. Aber b'chol loif narei hahemshach the Moshe Goel Rishon hu David. Mimakim shepasuk Moshe Misham Hischil David Malka Mashiach, because David is a continuation of Moshe Goel Rishon, but David is Goel Achron. Hahemshach l'zeh hu aidea inyan the Ashrei. Like we said before, Ashrei goes on that part of Torah. That's Tainuk. Hafotzes HaTorah, Bayres HaTorah, Achonach Yechrenuk Lisoretz. Boifen the Ashrei Hainu Aleph. Gam Hafotzes HaTorah B'chinas HaTainuk Shebetoirah. The part of Torah that we're spreading is the Tainuk of Torah. And like the Rebbe a lot of times also says, that a person shouldn't think that, you know what, yeah, there's a lot of Yidden that don't know Torah. And it's a lot of Yidden that can't learn Torah in Lashon Kodesh. And you got to translate for them in their language. But Chassidus, Primis HaTorah, teach them, deal with the basics, deal with Chumash, deal with Rashi, deal with Gemara, deal with Shkonara. But what do we see? We see L'Poyel that it's not that way. You sit down, you learn with somebody Tanya, you learn with somebody Frierdikeh Rebbe that may not know anything about Yiddishkeit, and that lights up the neshama. That's one thing. That the Tainuk Shebetoirah part has to be in a way of Bayer hated, Bayer, in a way of Shivim Lashon. And Beis, here's the second thing. The Rebbe always says that the way we have to be made to the Torah has to be in a way of Taka, of Tainuk. It shouldn't be done in a way of Nebuch. I'm a Lubavitcher, I got a Nebuch, teach Yidden Chassidus, I got a Nebuch, do Mevtzoyim. Should be, avoid the Afotz HaTorah, Primis HaTorah, Mitech Tainuk. ובשמחה וטוב לבב, כמו שכוסף עברת, השם אלוקיך בשמחה וטוב לבב. שהידי זה גם ההצלחי ביסר סייס וביסר אויז. When a person does the hafotzes hamayonis, hafotzes HaTorah, out of enjoyment, so then it's much more successful than if he does it as a, I feel I must, I gotta do it, I have no breda, and so on. So over here actually goes into the whole thing about the day of the week and the Shemitah. It was a Shemitah year that year. So I was thinking about skipping this over to the next page 204. Ois Zion. Let's skip over Hayrob, B'chol Omer, Le'il, B'negel, Ha'maisa, Ha'poyel, Ha'maisa, Ha'ikir. B'amdeino, B'resh Chodesh Shvat, Shebo Yehoel Moshe, Bayres HaTorah, Tzrich Eliyas, Avodas, Kol Echad V'echad Yisrael, Mitzad B'chinas Moshe Shebekir Bo. Again, like we said before, I have Moshe within me, so therefore I can do this. Be'inyan the Bayers HaTorah lahoise ba'afotzes HaTorah b'chlal. Ubemiuchad ba'afotzes hamayonas chutza. Ubadgosha hoyil goymer bayer. Just like we said by Moshe Rabbeinu, that he began. It wasn't that he did it only on Rosh Chodesh Shvat. It was the beginning of being Bayers HaTorah. Aleph hoyil hischil. Shebezem mudgir sheyeshna gam hemshcha pula. Hainu sheinu mistapik v'pula chad pa'omis. Ki in pula shenimshechas tkufa shlema. Leirak yom echad, and not only gimel yomim, like we know, but lazim nav chazaka, 3 times it's called a chazaka. Not even shavua shalom, which is called yomei hekif, the entire days of the cycle of a week. Chodesh shalom, el yosem chodesh shalom, karav l'arbaim yom. From Rosh Chodesh Shvat until Zayin Adar was 5 weeks, close to 40 days. And then the Rebbe says, really, the Tkuf of Moshe went even further, till Yud Nisan. This was Nimshach, this avoid of Bayras HaTorah. So then the Rebbe always says, Mailam b'kodesh v'masifim alzeh. Beis Bayer. So the Rebbe says, don't just say things. Don't just say words. But it has to be in a way of explained. She'enim stapik ba'amir ba'alma, kim ba'oifen de Bayer hated. Hainu hezber ubir betuv tam v'das cholu, koil b'shivim loshen, gamli Yehudim she'enim avinim adayin loshen ha'kodesh kanal ba'arucha. V'yesh lahoisif, lahadgish shayra zu, he biyachas chol echad ve'echad miYisrael lemigad levad katan b'nereinu v'zkaneinu goymer v'oneinu v'rseinu Bayers HaTorah l'chol echad ve'echad miYisrael v'yidei kol echad ve'echad miYisrael. Every Yid should do it, and every Yid should address it to every Yid. Bayers HaTorah l'chol echad ve'echad miYisrael gam liyehudi shenimtzu pinach hira choyke v'nedachas shebekatz v'tevel. Gam ubeikir b'muvan aruchni. In other words, it doesn't matter so much where his physical, geographical location is. The main thing is where his spiritual location is. K'loimer m'chutz l'gbulak dusha, chutz l'Yerushalayim v'Eretz Yisrael beruchnis, v'ad k'dei kach shebechutz la'aretz gufa nimtza pinach in nedachas. Kishem sh'adin de pekuach nefesh kipshutei b'negea l'chai haguf u'b'negea l'chol echad v'echad miYisrael mamish. May hagadol shebegdoilim ad lekotem shebektanim tinik ben yomish is a yotzes atal avra oilam. You don't say, pikuach nefesh, he's a little baby. Meilef, I'm going to save a gadol b'Yisrael. Meilef, I'm going to save someone over bar mitzvah that's mechuyev mitzvahs. There's no such type of thing. The mitzvah pikuach nefesh to save a guf of a yid is even to a baby. V'lo yoid al ashafilu kain gadol b'yem kippurim be'emtza avoyes haktoyres b'koyesh hakadoshim. Chayv lahafsik or lechas lefakech sagal kedei lahatzel tinik ben yoymei. It's a big pella. He's the Kohen Gadol. He's in the middle of the highest avodah, in the holiest place. So if it's that way when you're talking about pikuach nefesh, when it comes begashmias, moving gam benegel pikuach nefesh beruchnis benegel lachaya neshama, that it's also pikuach nefesh, and even if the person might be a Kohen Gadol that's over the avodah b'mekappurim, he has to fanamzach with this baby beruchnis. That is how it's the chiyuv al kol echad ve'echad. In other words, the ikar dagish over here is, the chiyuv is for kol echad ve'echad to save and to address even someone that's very far, even someone that's satinik in his yediyas and so on. And the next thing is through everyone. Ubayers HaTorah de kol echad ve'echad Yisrael. So it's amazing. The Rebbe is Pashut telling over here little kids to do miftzayim. Listen to this. Shekein l'chol aidei kol echad ve'echad Yisrael. Shekein l'chol echad ve'echad Yisrael yesh inyan mesuyim sheyachol lashpia lezulas. In kifit shematzinu shegam oni b'Yisrael chayv mitzvah tzedakah. Just like begashmis, someone that's materially poor. He doesn't have money in the bank. Still in all, there's a minimum amount that even an oni has to give, a shlish, I think, of a shekel or something over the entire year. That even if someone is poor beruchnius, I have nothing to give, I have nothing to teach. even he has to share. Val derech ze b'limud haTorah, shekasher loimed v'yideh inyan achad b'Torah, all will lamed inyan zel acherim. Like the Rebbe always says, if you know Aleph and that other person doesn't even know Aleph, you have to teach him Aleph. And the Rebbe says, Hachim yelled cotton b'chamish shanim lemikra. So he already knows something. He learned already chumash, so he has to learn with another kid. Void livnei zeh kishalayim etzuras oisis cholu. He knows literally Aleph Beis. He knows how to read an Aleph. A little kid doesn't even know how to read, but he goes to kindergarten, he goes to pre-1A, and they tell him the parsha of the week. So he has a chiyuv, he has an inyan, bayr Torah to go ahead and share it with another kid. The Rebbe says, all of the lamed inyan zeh liyeladim b'nei giloy u'ba'ayfin the bayr Torah koil habir b'sfas hamadina b'shivim lashon. I think we'll stop over here.